I remember receiving my first letter from my son a few years back. Scribbled on it were the words, "I love you." I was so happy I cried. At the time, I believed that love was all anyone needed. For some years now, I've been investigating a certain father and son, and I managed to get a hold of the first letter the boy wrote to his father. It said, "Father, one day, I will tear you to pieces. If there were demons in this world, what form would they take?" The answer to that question still eludes me. That day, I was reporting from a battlefield, gathering news about the war to bring to the world. When I headed back to the barracks, a message was waiting for me. I was dumbstruck. How could my hometown have come under attack? When I returned, nothing was as I remembered. The roads used to be quiet, hardly a car in sight. But now tanks and armored vehicles line the streets like an iron wall. Though it was noon, a thick fog of ash enveloped the sky in darkness. The blackened trees, the burning ground, the pungent, burnt air. The place I once called home was now just an ashen field, and streets echoed with the memories of playing children and delivery trucks. Everyone I loved had been lost to the past. That day, my old life ended, and a new one began. In my loneliness and despair, a hatred grew inside me. I found myself staying in a cheap hotel. Reports on the hellish war never let up. News of Heihachi's return to the Mishima Zaibatsu had sent shockwaves across the globe, and the announcement of the King of Iron Fist tournament flooded the airwaves day and night. But none of that mattered to me. From my drab room, I just stared up at the moonlit sky, looking for a ray of hope. The concept of evil seemed so vague. Who torched my hometown? The Mishima Zaibatsu? Or was it G Corporation? With the war submerged in chaos, who could tell? In the darkness, a fellow reporter visited me and offered me a ray of hope in the form of an expose on G Corporation. G Corp were at war with the Mishima Zaibatsu, and it appeared that they had the public on their side. People believed that the Zaibatsu had started the war, so it was only natural that they saw G Corp as their saviors. However, my reporter friend came into my hotel and, barely able to contain his excitement, presented me with the picture. It revealed G Corp's true colors, which conflicted with their public image. The picture shed light on the incident that had occurred only a few months earlier. It all started with an explosion in the heart of the Mishima estate. At the time, the media reported it as an unfortunate accident. But when strange truths began to come to the light, things didn't appear quite so clear-cut. After the explosion came the deaths of a number of G Corporation's executives. The newspapers put it down to a coincidence, a series of tragic occurrences. But the truth was far more sinister. In reality, an attempt by G Corporation to take out one of their own had failed, and the man they had targeted came baying for revenge. The missed target's name was Kazuya Mishima. After disposing of the guilty parties without so much as dirtying his hands, Mishima began to manipulate G Corporation from the shadows. Day in, day out, I found myself at the library, poring over articles, company directories, history books, you name it. I scavenged them all, looking for anything I could find on G Corporation's Kazuya, including his historical and familial links to the Mishima Zaibatsu. The truth had to be revealed, even if it meant doing so alone. The Mishimas were warriors hailing back as far as the Taira and Minamoto eras. With the advent of World War, they capitalized on the increased military demand. During my research, I came across two significant names. The first was Jinpachi Mishima. Head of the Mishima clan during the war, he abhorred needless conflict and reacted accordingly against the organization's military expansion by resolving instead to devote his family's legacy solely to martial arts. However, all that changed when Heihachi wrested control of the family helm, proceeding to rename the organization the Mishima Zaibatsu. As its head, Heihachi secured its reputation as a world-leading military firm. Which brings us to the second name, Jin Kazama. Seizing control from Heihachi, he reigned over his empire until only recently. He was also the one who started this damn war, which took everything from me. I dreamed of one day killing him with my bare hands. This lead sent me on a journey through countless documents, where I finally found her name in a single paragraph, Kazumi Hachijo. There was no mention of what kind of life she and Heihachi had led together, but it confirmed that Heihachi was Kazuya's father and Kazumi his mother. That's when I realized something shocking. The year Heihachi seized control from Jinpachi and established the Zaibatsu was the same year his wife Kazumi had died, and Kazuya had fallen from a cliff, sustaining terrible injuries. What could all this mean? Frustration had become a part of my daily life. Eventually, I ran into a guy in a restaurant. His eyes burned with an almost ungodly fighting spirit, and he looked at me as though he could see the darkest depths of my soul. "So, you're the one who's been looking into the Mishima Zaibatsu's affairs?" he said before making his way to the exit. The way he stared at me from the door let me know that he wanted me to follow him. Hypnotized, I walked slowly towards him. As we left the restaurant, he formally introduced himself. His name was Li Chaolan. I already knew about Li Chaolan's company, Violet Systems, famous for its humanoid research and brilliance in the field of ergonomics. As a child, Li had been adopted by Heihachi Mishima, so he knew Kazuya of G-Corp and once shared a rivalry with him in the ring. I listened intently, excited about this new breakthrough. Li's knowledge went beyond that of any article I had read. What he said next, though, unsettled me.
君は悪魔の存在を信じるかい?
He continued.
すべては和也だ。奴の血が三島家を狂わせた。
Lars Alexanderson was younger than I expected. When Li described him to me, of how he'd escaped, divided the Tekken force, and formed a rebel army, I imagined someone completely different. His eyes told a story of sadness hidden deep within. In the sterile air of Violet Systems, where he and Li were holed up together, Lars explained to me that he was Heihachi's illegitimate child. Heihachi had fathered him to cast aside all doubt that he had the devil gene in his blood. Lars existed solely for that purpose. I could barely contain my excitement at not only meeting a blood relative, but also at learning this revelation. While Lars and Lee conversed, I overheard something that shocked me. Jin Kazama had been found. Jin Kazama, Kazuya's son and Heihachi's grandson. The hatred I had held deep inside surged through my veins like a tidal wave. Jin had put the wheels in motion that led to me losing everything. Then, as if finally putting his feelings into words, Lars muttered, There was no mistaking what he had said. The minute I got back from Kyoto, I learned that the war had escalated further. The world's media was buzzing with news about the Zaibatsu, including the attack on Lee's Violet systems. It was then that I received an email from Lee himself, saying he wanted to introduce me to someone who was well-versed in the Mishima Zaibatsu's affairs. At last, my investigation was back on track. The email concluded with a name I'd yet to come across. Lars Alexanderson.
私が三島家を追放された本当の理由は、和也の悪魔じみた力に気づいたからではないかと思っている。
I could tell by the look in his eyes that he was telling the truth. A few days later, I headed to Kyoto. The old guy I'd contacted was already waiting for me at the rundown house where we'd arranged to meet. I'd like to know more about the mystery of the Hachijo household strength. I decided to be straight up, which seemed to knock the old-timer back. I didn't believe in devils, had no reason to. But Lee had said to me that Kazuya's blood cursed the Mishimas. The archived account on the Hachijo, who Heihachi's wife Kazumi belonged to. I arranged to meet a guy who'd served the Hachijo family many years ago. If Kazuya had inherited Kazumi's blood, then maybe this guy could help me. But my efforts were in vain. The old man knew nothing. Then, when I thanked him and was made to leave,
そこの鬼さん、そこの毛、そこの毛、赤い川では水遊び、川が流れた先にも鬼さん、どこまで続くや、この鬼遊び。
he sung slowly. It was a traditional nursery rhyme in the Hachijo family. When I heard it, I froze. What if the demon represented a mysterious power? Red referred to blood, and the river symbolized a bloodline. As the old man hummed on, I shook my head in horror. The Zaibatsu downing their own satellite weapon, destroying an entire town, left no doubt in my mind that this war was not between humans. The atrociousness of the fighting was inconceivable to the average person, and they soon forgot about Kazuya transforming into a devil, instead choosing to believe that the Zaibatsu were the antagonists. The concept of good and evil changed every day. What a world we live in. I was probably the only person on the planet not paying attention to the news. To me, evil was that which had taken everything away from me, and I couldn't rest until I put a stop to it. So I went directly to the Mishima Zaibatsu's headquarters and told them I would expose them for what they are. I knew I was risking my life just to be laughed off, but I couldn't stand by and watch the world descend further into chaos. Still, they paid me no attention. Bereft of all hope, I wandered around town aimlessly. But then, a man dressed in black approached me silently and told me that Heihachi had agreed to meet me. A few hours later, I was placed in a car and driven in a completely different direction than the Zaibatsu's headquarters. When I arrived at my destination, Heihachi Mishima was there waiting for me. I couldn't take my eyes off the live broadcast. Next to me, Lee and Lars barked orders frantically, desperately trying to verify whether the images were a hoax or not. The demon on screen was unlike anything I'd imagined. No, it was something much more horrific. The devil incarnate.
The demon-like creature you see on your screens is apparently Kazuya Mishima, said to be controlling G Corporation from the shadows. World leaders are currently debating whether to believe.
The report's just in that the creature has been subdued by the Mishima Zaibatsu.
I'd long assumed this war was between humans. That my family, my hometown, had been razed to the ground by people. He's alive? That was the first thing I thought when I saw Jin Kazama. I took the opportunity to quietly pocket a screwdriver. The man who had stolen everything from me lay before my eyes. An opportunity like this may never present itself again.
俺もジンを殺してやりたい思いは同じさ。だが、この戦いを終わらせられるのはこいつしかいないんだ。
It was as if Lars could read my mind. He explained that when Jin woke up, he would try to use Jin's power to put a stop to all the fighting. All I could do was nod in agreement.
あやつがわしの父、ジンパチの道場に来たのは、まだ年半もいかぬ少女の頃じゃった。共に汗水流し、武道に明け暮れる中、つまりライバル。武道とは、真偽ともに己を追い込む孤独な世界。和美は次第に、わしにとって唯一無二の存在となっていった。息子の和也も生まれ、わしらは幸せじゃった。特に和美は、和也のことを目に入れても痛くないほど溺愛しておった。すべての歯車が狂ったのは、貴様の言う通り、その年のこと。稽古中、和美が突然倒れおった。和美は信じられぬほどの高熱を出しており、急ぎ病床に寝かせたのだが、和美。
When I came to, I was on a wharf with Lars. I had no idea where I was or what he was doing there. Lars said he'd received a message from the Zaibatsu telling him to come here. He bundled me into his car and then took me back to Violet Systems. As we drove back, Heihachi's words ran through my mind over and over. Why did he let me interview him like that? Why did he leave everything to me? And what was that mournful look in his eyes? Question upon question whirled through my mind, but not a single answer. Everything went down only a few hours later. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Lee was fervently trying to ascertain Heihachi's whereabouts. Eventually, his spy satellite spotted him and transmitted a picture to us. I stood there in shock. The man I'd spoken to was somewhere unbelievable.